Hi, my name is Lauren Dolby, and I teach Math 1 and Math 2 at IMS. A little bit about myself. This is my 12th year teaching here at IMS, and like I said, I teach Math 1 and Math 2. One thing I want to start off sharing is that I run my classroom using the democratic classroom model, which is really focused on problem solving, students having responsibility through class jobs. We have class meetings, and if you look at that image on the screen, instead of me being in the center and all the students are kind of coming out separate from the middle, on the right-hand side, you can see that we're all interconnected, so working together in our classroom community to learn and to grow. For those of you who have sixth grade students, I just like to remind parents that sixth grade is the kindergarten of middle school. There's so many new things to learn. They're going from class to class. They're learning how to use Schoology, taking the iPad back and forth from home. And it's a time to make mistakes, and that's totally fine. In fact, I encourage students to make mistakes because that means they can take risks and they can continue to grow. And I also really encourage growing in self-advocacy. And so if you're working with your student, and this is really both for 6th and 7th graders, if you're working with your student and they have a question, I would encourage you to sit down with them and help them send me an email or a Schoology message to reach out to me. Of course, you can do that if that's something that is something that you have a concern with, but I always encourage students to reach out to me themselves. Here, I won't go through it all, but on the left is the Math 1 topics, and on the right is Math 2, and that's the order we do it in. The ones that are bolded, those are the bricks of each course's learning, and the ones that are at the bottom that are not in bold, they're kind of the mortar. They fill in between, building off of what was learned in previous grades and preparing students for what's to come. Our curriculum we use is EdGems Math. Your student will be getting a textbook to take home if they choose. Otherwise, all students will have online access to EdGems online. It's just through the internet. It's not we have a little icon on the iPad, but it is not an app, and students log in with Google. And for each lesson, they can access each of these resources that you see here on this screen. Here at IMS, we use grading for equity, and on the left-hand side, you will see the grade marks. Some of the things to note with grading for equity is that only assessments will be graded. We don't call homework as daily practice, but that is not part of a student's grade. I believe it is really important for students to complete it, but it does not count for their overall grade. Grading for equity measures a student's mastery of a grade level of a standard. And they also have multiple opportunities to demonstrate proficiency by taking retakes. It's not just a free-for-all retake. They have to make corrections to their tests so that they can learn what they didn't learn, and to show that they've put in that effort, and then they can take a retake. When it comes to quizzes, some of the quizzes won't have a level 4 opportunity, but all unit tests will have a level 4, and every standard has a test. So all students will be able to have the opportunity to reach for a level 4 on every skill and standard. One of the analogies I like to use when thinking about the levels of proficiency is riding a bike. At the bottom, you see a tricycle that's empty, that's insufficient evidence. We don't know if a student can ride it or not. At level 1, they are riding a tricycle. So they are out there on the road, but not quite yet on a bike. 2, you have a bike with training wheels, so we're getting closer, and a 3 is the standard. They are riding the bike, they're exactly where they need to be. You can ride all around, and you can learn more, but you are not losing out on anything because you can ride around and transport yourself. A 4 is you are able to do those wheelies and those jumps on the bike, and so it's really going beyond what is the standard, and we encourage all students to go for that. But it's just I just really want to show that it is not the same as the 4.0 GPA scale that colleges use or high schools use, that it's a different system. And the 3, that means that a student has learned everything that they need to learn, and the 4 is that they have been able to make connections or think more critically, creatively, about whatever concept that they are demonstrating. Here's an example of a proficiency scale for cooking, just to put it in really general terms, outside of math, if you look at the activity cooking, that instead of cooking, think about math, but that's it. And then you have the subject, which is the entree or main dish. And so skill 1.1 is soup. Level 1 is cup of noodles. You just add water. Level 2 is can of soup. You have to open it up, put it in a pan on the stove, heat it up. Then level 3, homemade soup from a recipe. And level 4 is you are making that soup without a recipe. And you can kind of see that that's a similar pattern through all of them below, but really to give some more language and analogies for how a proficiency scale works. This here is a proficiency scale. I believe it's, yeah, this is for math 2, although the math 1 for this skill looks very similar, just without working with fractions. So again, it starts at that low level of right ratios to represent a situation, and then it builds as you go up. Students throughout the year will be goal setting and progress tracking in each unit. They'll have it in their Google Drive, so they can always access that. You can always ask them to show you, and as we go through each pre-assessment and exit card, they'll be tracking their progress, and the goal is that over time that they see growth by the time they get over here. All right, next we have the comfort zone. This is something that I use to help students really determine where they are in their learning and what they need. For some students, something in the comfort zone is something that they're able to do, and there isn't much learning happening when they're there, but that same activity or assignment could cause another student to be in the panic zone. And so the students always will have the option to choose the level they're working at. Typically that shows up in the learning pathway and stretching pathway, both for in-class and daily practice. And so I ask students, today with this concept, what zone are you in for each assignment, and think about what to choose. And if they choose the stretching and that puts them in a panic zone, I encourage them to move back down to the learning pathway, or vice versa. If the learning pathway is in their comfort zone, that they might try the stretching pathway, because I hope for all students to be in that growth zone, whatever that looks like for them. And then we have daily practice. This is posted to Schoology. Again, there's the learning pathway and the stretching pathway. I ask students to work for 30 minutes. That's not 30 minutes of sitting there and scrolling on their iPad or phone, but really 30 minutes of engaged practice. And after that that they can stop. And if they're having trouble, they can send me a message on Schoology saying, hey, I tried to do this. I'm really stuck on this. Can we go over it? So that is, that's the expectation for that. And then I post every answer key. I highlight the problems for the learning or the stretching. And it's really helpful even for parents or older siblings who might be helping a student, that they can look. I show how I do all the steps on the answer key so that you can follow along. I know some parents have been concerned that I just give the student the answer keys, but to be honest, there are apps out there that kids can just scan the problem and it does the problem for them. So I'd rather at least have them see it, do it correctly, but really that is a great tool for them to check their work. And lastly, they will take a picture of the work with their iPad. It's okay if it's more than one picture, and submit it to Schoology as a digital submission, which also creates a digital portfolio of all of their work. And I'm not quite sure why my last slide isn't working. But lastly, everything is posted to Schoology. So that is the place to go for all their assignments. If they miss school or if they need to look back at something, it will all be there. And then the final grades of quizzes and tests and assessments will be on Skyward. But otherwise, Schoology is the place to go for your day-to-day learning. Thanks so much.